My name is Daniel Ross, Level 2 Researcher, Site 19. If you're reading this, it means I'm either missing or worse, because what I'm about to tell you, it isn't in the official files. The Foundation hides the truth even from its own people. And SCP-173, it's not just a statue. It's not just a Euclid-class anomaly. It's something else, something aware. That night, I was on observation duty. My assignment was simple: monitor the containment chamber of SCP-173 for 6 hours and log any activity. No direct contact, no entering the cell. Just sit in front of 4 surveillance monitors in a quiet control room. At first, I didn't mind. It was boring, sure, but boring meant safe. I'd seen the thing before during a maintenance rotation roughly 2 meters tall, shaped like a crude humanoid figure made of concrete and rebar, flecks of spray paint on its torso. Nothing terrifying, at least when you looked at it directly. But everyone at Site 19 knows the stories. The guards whisper about blanks gone wrong, about teams going in and never coming out. You don't let your eyes off it, not even for a split second. That's what makes 173 so dangerous. It moves when you don't see it, and when it moves, it kills. Quickly, brutally. I thought I was safe behind the glass, watching through the cameras. I thought that was enough. I was wrong. It was around 2 a.m. when things started to change. The room was silent, except for the faint hum of the monitors and the buzzing fluorescent lights above. I sat back, trying to fight off the exhaustion creeping into my eyes, sipping at stale coffee gone cold. On screen, SCP-173 hadn't moved. It never moved. It just stood in the center of the chamber, facing the wall, like some grotesque art installation forgotten in the dark. Then one of the monitors flickered, just static for a fraction of a second. When the feed returned, the statue was different. Its head was turned, not by much, just a few degrees, but enough that it was now angled toward the camera, toward me. I froze. My hand stopped halfway to my mouth, coffee trembling in the cup. I blinked hard, leaned closer. Maybe I was imagining it. Maybe the camera glitched. But then the bottom right monitor flickered. When the image cleared, SCP-173's head was tilted further, its face, or what should have been its face, aimed directly at the lens. I felt my stomach drop. No, I whispered to myself, that's not possible. The feeds are supposed to be continuous, no cuts. If 173 moved, the camera should have caught it mid-step. But it didn't. It was just one position, then another. Instant. Clean. As if it was letting me see it move. For the next few minutes I just sat there, frozen, staring at the monitors. My eyes burned, but I didn't dare blink. Sweat trickled down my neck. The room suddenly felt hotter, the buzzing lights louder. Then all 4 monitors flickered at once. When the static cleared, SCP-173 was no longer standing in the center of the room. It was closer, pressed against the far wall, facing the camera directly, its concrete body hunched slightly forward. Its featureless head was cocked at an unnatural angle, as though listening. My throat tightened. The report logs never mentioned this. None of the files said it would react to surveillance. but I swear to you it was looking at me, and I think it knew I was the only one watching. I barely slept after that first night of observation. The image of that thing standing there, immobile, but somehow waiting, burned itself into my mind. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined it moving in the dark corners of my room, frozen only when I looked straight at it. The next shift, I told myself I'd handle it better. The Foundation drilled us on protocol. Never break eye contact. Never blink alone. Always rotate watches. Easy rules. Rules meant safety. Or so they wanted us to believe. But that night, the routine started to crack. There were 3 of us. Me, Morales, and Jensen. Jensen was new, barely 20, shaking like a leaf when he swiped his card. Into observation room C. Morales was the veteran. Calm, bored even. He leaned back in his chair and smirked at me. "Relax, you stare, it stares. Just don't get cocky and we'll be fine," he muttered. I wanted to believe him. The first 2 hours passed in silence. SCP-173 stood in the center of its cell, head tilted upward, like it was admiring something above us. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and every 30 minutes we'd call out our blink rotations. Blinking now. Switching. Clear. The sound of our voices kept me sane. It was like tethering ourselves to reality. But Jensen wasn't doing well. His breathing was uneven, his eyes red, tearing up from being forced open so long. "Hey, rookie," Morales said after a while. "Step back, rub your eyes for a second. We got you covered." I shot him a look. "You know the rules. No solo blinks." "Relax," he repeated, but softer this time. He didn't look relaxed anymore. The next 5 minutes dragged like hours. I could feel something was wrong. The cameras flickered once, barely a second, but enough to raise the hairs on my neck. Morales cursed and tapped the monitor. "Old wiring," he said, but his voice didn't sound convinced. Then it happened. Jensen blinked, alone. I heard the wet sound, first a short, violent snap, and then a scream that ended as quickly as it began. By the time I whipped my head back to the monitor, the feed was nothing but static. The cell camera had gone dark. Morales swore loudly and jumped up. "Control, this is Observation C. We've got a containment breach camera down in 173's cell." Static hissed back at us. No response. We were cut off. The silence that followed was unbearable. My chest tightened as I realized the Foundation's golden rule. When communication fails, you're already dead. The backup monitor blinked back on for a split second, long enough to show us something we'll never unsee. SCP-173 wasn't in the center of its cell anymore. It was pressed against the glass, face almost touching the lens. And its head, it wasn't tilted anymore. It was angled down like it had chosen one of us. The sight of it against the glass paralyzed us. Its concrete face, featureless except for those wide, painted eyes, stared straight into the camera like it knew we were on the other end. My skin crawled. "Christ," Morales whispered. "It's not supposed to move while under observation." We were watching. We didn't look away, but deep down I knew. Jensen's blink was enough. 1 second, that's all it took for SCP-173 to advance. One heartbeat, and it had cut the distance in half. The intercom crackled alive with static, then silence again. No instructions. No backup. Just us. "We need to get out of here," Morales muttered, gripping the sidearm. He wasn't even supposed to use against 173. Bullets didn't matter. We both knew that. The observation room was sealed tight. One reinforced door between us and the hallway. But that glass window looking into the containment chamber, it suddenly felt paper-thin. I forced myself to keep my eyes on the monitors, terrified of another blink. The backup feed flickered again. This time SCP-173 was gone from the glass. The cell looked empty. "No," I whispered. Then came the sound. Bang. A heavy thud reverberated through the concrete walls, shaking dust loose from the ceiling tiles. Bang, bang. It was slamming against the chamber door, trying to break through. Each impact was sharper, closer. My pulse hammered in my ears as Morales grabbed the combs again, shouting for help into dead air. And then silence. We waited, holding our breath, praying it had stopped. I wanted to believe the reinforced cell could hold. But then something worse happened. A slow creak. I looked down at the observation room door. It wasn't the chamber anymore. The sound was coming from our door. SCP-173 was no longer in its cell. My vision tunneled. I didn't even notice I was crying until a tear blurred my sight. I wiped it furiously, terrified of breaking eye contact with the hallway window. Morales' hands shook as he raised his pistol. It can't be here. The locks? The lights cut out. Pitch black. In the dark, I heard Morales scream my name. Then another snap, sickening and final. The kind of sound that marks the end of a life. I blinked. Couldn't help it. When the emergency lights flickered back on, Morales was on the floor, head twisted at an impossible angle, blood pooling beneath him, and standing just behind his body, closer to me than I could ever bear, was SCP-173. Its face pointed at me, those fake-painted eyes staring, unblinking, unrelenting. And for the first time since I'd seen it, I realized something that froze my blood more than anything else. It wasn't looking at me like prey. It was looking at me like it was waiting. I couldn't breathe. My throat locked up, every instinct screaming at me to run, to move, to do something. But the moment I even thought of blinking, the image of Morales' broken body flashed in my head. One blink, that was all it took. SCP-173 stood no more than 2 meters away. Its stubby arms, smeared with fresh blood, were frozen mid-reach. The painted eyes didn't shift, but I felt it watching me, waiting for the smallest slip. Seconds stretched into hours. My own heartbeat was the loudest sound in the room. I tried to steady my breathing, tried to convince myself I could hold its gaze forever, but my eyes burned. The sting grew sharper with every passing second. "No, no, no," I whispered through clenched teeth, forcing my lids open wider. Tears streamed down my cheeks. My body was betraying me. Then I realized if I didn't do something, if I just stood here waiting, I'd end up like Morales. I needed light, backup, anything. Slowly, carefully, I reached toward the desk where the backup radio sat. My hand trembled violently, but I never broke eye contact with the statue. Every second felt like balancing on a razor's edge. My fingers closed around the radio. Static hissed. I pressed the button. This is observation, post Delta 7. My voice cracked, echoing off the concrete. SCP-173 breached containment. Morales is down, he's dead. It's in the observation room with me. The radio died. No static, no signal, just silence. My stomach dropped. It wasn't malfunction. It was deliberate. Something cut the comms. The emergency lights above flickered. The shadows bent, stretching across the room, crawling up the walls. I dared not look away, but in my periphery, I saw the shadows converge on SCP-173, swallowing its outline, distorting it. That's when I heard it. A whisper, not from the intercom, not from the hall, from inside the room. A low, gravelly murmur, like concrete grinding on stone. Blink. My whole body shook. My mind screamed that it was impossible 173 didn't speak. It wasn't alive, but the word was unmistakable, and it came again, clearer this time. Blink. I pressed my back against the wall, radio slipping from my hand. My eyes were wide, burning, veins throbbing. I couldn't last. My body wouldn't last. And then I realized the awful truth. I wasn't being watched. I was being tested. SCP-173 wasn't killing me, yet because it was waiting to see how long I could endure. Like a child playing with an insect, prolonging the moment before crushing it. My vision blurred. Tears distorted its shape, made the painted eyes swim in my sight. I couldn't tell if I was even staring directly at it anymore. The whisper grew louder, echoing in my skull, vibrating my bones. Blink. I screamed, a raw, animal sound, and in that scream I slipped. My eyes closed, just for a fraction of a second. When I opened them again, SCP-173 was gone. The room was empty. Morale's body still lay twisted on the floor, but the statue wasn't there, and somehow that was worse. The room was silent, too silent. I stood frozen in the corner, my chest heaving, eyes darting wildly, searching for any trace of the statue. Morale's blood was already drying on the floor, the metallic stench clawing at my throat. But SCP-173 was gone. That should have been a relief. It wasn't, because SCP-173 doesn't leave. It doesn't wander. It waits, which meant only one thing. It was still here. I spun in circles, refusing to blink, the emergency lights painting the walls in a sick, pulsing red. Every corner looked wrong, every shadow stretched too far, too thin. Then I saw it. Not the statue itself, but an impression in the wall, like something massive had been pressed into the concrete. A faint outline of its head and shoulders embedded in stone, as if it had simply moved through the wall like it wasn't there. My knees buckled. The Foundation files said SCP-173 can't move while observed. That was the rule, the only rule keeping it contained. But what if that was just the part they told us? What if there was more? The air grew heavy, and then the whispers returned. Blink. This time they came from all directions at once. I covered my ears, but the sound wasn't entering through them. It was inside my skull, vibrating through my teeth, crawling down my spine. I staggered toward the door, slammed my hand on the control panel. Nothing. Dead. The entire observation post was locked down. No escape. The shadows on the walls began to shift. Long cracks formed in the concrete, spreading like veins, black and pulsing. Something writhed behind them, pressing outward. And then the shape emerged. SCP-173 pulled itself through the wall. But it wasn't just concrete scraping anymore. The thing was changing. Its crude, painted face stretched, splitting wider, teeth forming where there should have been only painted lips. Its glassy, unblinking eyes rolled weightily in their sockets, locking onto me with hunger. For the first time since I joined the Foundation, I realized the reports weren't lies. They were omissions. They never told us what SCP-173 really was because no one had survived long enough to describe it. I pressed myself against the opposite wall, throat raw with screams. It tilted its head, that awful smile widening, and the whisper came one last time. Not gravelly, not inhuman. It was my own voice. Blink. Something in me shattered. My body obeyed. My eyes slammed shut. And I felt it. Not the crack of my neck, not the rush of death, but a presence. It slid into me like water filling a hollow shell. My lungs seized. My heartbeat thundered. My vision flooded with red. I wasn't dead. I wasn't alive. I was something between. The shadows peeled away, and I saw through them through its eyes. The world had shifted, bending, fracturing. Everything was prey. Fragile, blind prey. I wanted to scream, to claw my way out of my own skin. But my body was no longer mine. I don't know how long I stood there. When I finally blinked again, SCP-173 was gone, and I was still standing, breathing, watching. That was 3 days ago. The Foundation hasn't come for me yet. Maybe they don't know. Maybe they do, and they're just waiting to see what happens. But I can't stop hearing it. Every time I close my eyes, every time I look in a mirror, every time I see another person walk by, blinking without fear. The whisper, do it, blink, pass it on. And I think I finally understand what Morales saw before the end. 173 doesn't just kill, it chooses. And now, I think it's chosen me. So if you're hearing this, if these words reach you, I need you to know something. Don't blink. Don't ever blink. Because the next time I close my eyes, it might be you I'm standing behind.